Okay, Module 20. Module 20, it goes along with 4.2 and 4.3 in our AP course. Module 20 is all about soil. So it's going to discuss soil formation, soil erosion, what soil made out of, and then what are the different properties that soil has based on its composition. So the first thing that, again, this is not, they start this chapter with something that you don't really need to know. I have never seen any questions on the different types of rocks. So again, I would not spend a lot of time on that. I also wouldn't spend a lot of time on the rock cycle. That's just not something that you necessarily need to know. Now, what you do need to know is that rock is actually broken down by weathering and erosion. So understanding what physical weathering is, understanding what chemical weathering is, and then understand that environments can change because of erosion, and then that eroded material actually moves downstream and can actually be carried through watersheds and then deposited in areas that can again alter the environment in which they are. So that process is important to know. Also understanding that acid precipitation or acid rain can cause more erosion to occur, and so that's all really important. Something that I wanted to note, something that stops erosion is plant life. So if we allow riparian corridors or planted areas to be along our waterways, like I have talked about that in Geist before, where we have yards that run all the way up to the water, but really it'd be better if there were some plants, a strip of plants that were planted around the waterway. Strips of plants not only hold in soil, but they also filter out any of those chemicals that are in the environment. And now this is a really important section. So make sure that you're taking pretty good notes here. You need to understand how soil forms. And there's these processes here, this red text. It says soil forms as a result of the parent material, which is the bedrock that is deep underground. Climate is important for developing soil. Topography, so how hilly or what the different elevations are within an area, the organisms that are there, and then with time. And so I really like this picture because it shows you that immature soil, this has been, looks like an altered ecosystem, and there's very immature soil. There's a lot of rock here, and then over time we have bacteria and animals, decomposers, and different things that move into this area, but also just physical weathering with water causes some of this rock to erode and form soil. And you can see here, this is very mature soil. We now have plant life. Soil formation runs along with succession. So we've talked about that before. So make sure that you make the connection between those two things. Okay. We're going to watch a video in class about what all lives in the soil too. Fungus is also another very important aspect of the soil ecosystem, and so we'll talk about that as well when we watch that video. All right, now there's almost always a soil horizon question on the test. They love to put a picture on there and then ask you questions. So you should know these different horizons. E is not always present. That's the alluviated layer, or the E horizon. It's also called or referred to as the zone of leaching. So make sure you understand what that is. That is not always in soil, but it is, they are showing it here on this horizon. And then here's a nice definitions of each of those different horizons. So make sure that you understand that. The parent material is going to be the subsoil and then the bedrock that is down below. The youngest material and also what has the most organic matter is going to be closest to the top. So that's really important to know about soil horizons. All right, and then understanding how erosion can happen. All right, so these different processes that contribute to soil erosion, and that some things that we do, particularly in agriculture or in land development, cause extreme amounts of erosion, which erosion is never a good thing. It's basically considered to be water pollution if there's a lot of erosion in an area. So again, just make sure that you know that. Okay, moving on. So soils have different physical, chemical, and biological properties, and all of that affects productivity. Productivity is like primary productivity, plant growth. Okay, and so all of these things impact the plants that grow. And they really want you to know all of this information. So this would be another good area that you take a lot of notes. You will need to be able to understand the 3 types of particles that make up soil. So we're going to be seeing this in lab, so make sure that you pay attention to this lab. We're also going to be looking at water's water holding capacity, its permeability. We're going to determine what type of soil that I have in my backyard. I'm going to bring in some soil. You also need to be able to use a soil triangle. That is on every single AP test. They always want you to use a soil triangle. So again, we'll talk about that in class. And then, like I said, I'm going to be showing a nice video that shows all of the biological properties of soil. So all that living stuff that is found within soil, that'll be something really important to know as well. Okay, I think that is it for soil and soil properties, and I will see you with Module 21.